Yeah.
I mean, I think overall, long term, it's better, particularly for your type of demographic who are possibly limited on getting to see you, both physically and maybe time-wise, if we are busy as practitioners.
Yeah.
The actual journey to get to see you, and for us commercially, and well as, you know, so there's a frustration there because it's been forced upon us, and if you know our ages, I'll include you in my age group. If you're our kind of general demographic, then in age,
yeah,
that kind of not growing up with technology in the same way, maybe some of these young Sarahs and Harrys. I don't know how old Harry is, but you know, these younger folk. I grew up on Atari and Binatone.
Yeah.
If any of you out there remember that, you can give it a thumbs up right now.
Well, I'm a bit older than you, Rach, and yeah.
So yeah, we were just talking, guys, while people are coming in about kind of the current situation. So what I'm going to do, I don't know how many I'm going to get, as always, it's just random. When it's free, people either see it as not valuable, although I've just been looking at some posts and people are raving about it, oh, you must go along. So we may get a few trickle in as we begin. So as always, can I get you to tell me who you are, why you're here, your biggest frustration now, and how about your prediction for your industry in the future? Have you had a think about it? Good to see you back, Sarah. Hiya, Harry. Hiya, Robbie. How you doing? So just post in there, let me know your thoughts on any of those points. What I really need today is questions, please, which is why I've posed you this question of why are you here? What I would prefer not to read is just to see what's going on. So by telling me what you do, your profession, maybe your biggest frustration, and what is it about the title of this session being a Biomechanics Q&A that has brought you here? Why did you want to come along? So try and think about what are the barriers you hit when you're in your practice? What are you challenged by in terms of anatomy, human movement, and exercise? That's all right, Robbie, no problem. So come on, guys, type away. Sarah's frantically typing there. Just put you guys on mute just for now. Sarah, sports therapist, just wants to get back to work, although feeling anxious and nervous. Yeah, we were just saying the same, Sarah, about returning with having so long off, terminologies and emphasis. Right, okay, it's a good one, actually. Terminology and language, I talk about quite a lot, and I think there is potential for a lot of ambiguity, but I'll go through that in a moment, what my thoughts are. Hi there, how you doing? So let us know who you are, why you're here, what do you want to know? Because if I don't know, I need to call upon one of the guys in here to maybe offer their thoughts. I am just a facilitator of discussion. So what I like to do is try and steer conversations to the whole group. I know we've got in this group people who are at clinical degree level qualified. We've got others who are more at the sort of personal trainer, biomechanics coach end, sports therapy. So just type away. Biggest frustrations. Harry, how you doing? Don't be shy. If you can just type in your profession, Harry. Do I know you, Harry? I know a couple of Harrys. Are you a Harry? I know. What's your profession, Harry? And any of your questions. I don't know if you've been before. We've had some Harrys in before, but I'm not sure. So Marcus is, have you changed your name back to Marcus from Murray? Did you do that for me? Thank you. You didn't do it just for me, did you? So Marcus is a physio of MSK and neurophysio, PT and rehab, which is, I think it's great when we've got this kind of two worlds coming together, both in one room and within the same professional, to give that kind of viewpoint, and an osteo student, and also here to facilitate and see what comes up. Julie's here. Hiya, Julie. So Julie, let us know again any questions. So I know that looking at the group, most of you have been here for a few weeks, which is great. Let's just let Brett log in. I think Brett might be a first time. Hiya, Brett. How you doing?
Yeah,
great
good.
to have you here. So we're just starting with who are you? Why are you here? Biggest frustration right now, and maybe a prediction for the future of your industry. So Robbie is a biomechanics trainer, almost a coach, and from a military background. And then Claire, spinning instructor, working with to finish level 4 PT, running a cycle coaching business with a partner, James Roberts Coaching, which includes bike fits. Love learning. Every day is a school day. Whereabouts are you, Claire, in the world? I don't think you've put it in there. Cheshire. Right, okay. So I think it's always good to know where people are from and to connect as well. So Julie is Pilates yoga. Fantastic. Harry's staying quiet. That's okay, Harry. No pressure whatsoever. Brett, hopefully you're typing there, mate. Obviously, so I know you can hear us, so that we know your background. Personal trainer, I think it says on Brett's vest there, on your logo or your avatar. Is it an avatar? Your little image. So, and Robbie's up in the Highlands, up in Scotland. So I'm not getting any questions, which makes it a challenge to facilitate a 1 hour Q&A session. Brett, PT for 9 years, fantastic, all areas of health and fitness. Good to see you there, Brett. How you doing? On video now, fantastic.
Yeah, I'm good. You hear me all right?
So what I'm going to do, Brett, is I'm just going to mute everyone just to save on noise interference for the video, so forgive me on that. You can wave if you're on a video, or you can thumbs up or type if you want me to go back over anything, or if you've got a question at all. So I need to know if you've got any questions, guys. Mark is back. Is it Mark? Because he's got an MBA arc, so it kind of reads Mark, but I'm aware there's a B in there to trick me up. I know Mark was here last week as well. So Mark, let us know who you are, what you do, where you are. Where are you, Brett? Where in the world are you? You just type in the box, let us know. And then we've got Heather has made it. Hi, Heather. Hi, Heather. Good to have you along. Can you just type in the chat box who you are, what you do, where you are, what your question is? Because I need some questions. Brett's in Aylesbury. Been a PT 9 years, so that's great, in all areas of health and fitness. So I would like you to type, particularly if you've not been here before at one of these sessions, number one frustration in your practice, your business right now. Heather's a PT for 3 years from Buckinghamshire, so I gather that you and Brett you both came through from that post in UK PTs, wasn't it, I think? So thanks for doing that, Brett, and highlighting it for Heather. Brilliant. Are you in a chain gym, independent gym, your own gym? Just out of interest to know the audience. And I can see Julie now. How are you doing, Julie? Looking all relaxed and laid back over there. Fantastic. So as predicted, 8 minutes in, I haven't got any questions yet, which makes it slightly awkward. Oh, brilliant, we've got a question. What's a good way to start to analyse clients for their biomechanics needs? Brilliant, great question as well. Thank you, Brett. So we'll start with that one, and I've got some backup info just in case, because what often happens is people want to just come and see and watch what's going on. What I want to do right from the beginning is say to you that in any classroom that I run, that I'm facilitating a discussion like this, whether it's online or face-to-face, I encourage and try and manage and facilitate an inclusive environment. No question you ever ask me will ever be deemed a stupid one. And so I think people often feel maybe a little bit intimidated when they're in a group environment with their peers. one of the things in 16 years of teaching and about 30 years in the industry, I have come to realize is everybody has a little bit of a low confidence on their level of anatomy recall and knowledge. No matter what level you're at, there is always space to learn. So rather than trying to keep up appearances and pretend we remember things, that can interfere with actually being able to learn. So I want you to know that it's okay to say, I have no idea, or to ask a question that you think everybody else will know the answer to and you're afraid to ask it. Please ask away. Somebody else is probably thinking it. And then to add on to that, Brett's saying, own studio, brilliant, technically, yeah, okay. Heather does all the, oh, bless. I can see you've got a good working relationship with that post. So Brett is asking about a good way to start to analyse clients for their biomechanical needs. If we look at what biomechanics is, it can be perceived as a very complex science. And that's predominantly how it is seen, certainly by the personal training world or the exercise world, and even the manual therapy world as well, I think. Although manual therapist's anatomy exam is usually a bit more intensive than a personal trainer's anatomy exam. So where do we begin and how do we sort of define it all? And I'll come back to that point that you've just raised there, Brett, in a moment. Biomechanics is just human movement and the study of it. So we're all, everybody in here, hiya Jamie, everybody in here is in some way involved in the science of biomechanics, even if it's as simple as watching a client squat, see the knee caves in, the client says it hurts, and Brett says, how can I help this? Right up to the other end of the sort of most common end that we perceive it as, which is very complex forces, lever lengths, first class lever, second class lever, vectors and video analysis, very complex. So we want to leave that for the environment where they have that kind of equipment, which is video analysis, gait analysis. It's very expensive. It's usually in a university or a very sophisticated laboratory. So I'm quite confident that probably 95% of the people in here do not have access to biomechanical analysis equipment. I think I'm right in that. Although, to Brett's point, if you have a phone, you do have access to applications that can assist video analysis alone, doing a video before and after, which is the part I want to focus on in relation to Brett's question. So a client comes in, and I'm going to simplify it for you first, Brett. Dead simple, you're already doing it. You ask them to squat, you watch it, and the idea is over time you want to either improve it or alter it or vary it or whatever. So you're already doing biomechanical analysis. So let me make an assumption, and please correct me if I'm wrong. Most trainers and coaches and therapists feel they need to know more when they can't solve a problem that they commonly see. And I've used the squat as a basic one because most of our clients come to us and struggle with a simple squat technique. So please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just making assumptions based on the information I've got. So a new client comes in, you ask them to move, basic standard squat, which most people put into programs. For example, it's thought of as a basic fundamental movement to be able to stand and sit. And if you don't have certain joint ranges through the foot, knee and ankle and hip, then you're going to struggle to walk and move around your house. So asking a client to squat and seeing them struggle, maybe under a load or even body weight, we may think, right, okay, what do I need to do? What have I got in my arsenal to understand why they're moving that way? It's very easy to see the what, which is what I'm explaining here. It's very easy to see that their knees cave in or their spine folds forwards or they struggle to keep upright or they twist a little bit. That's really easy. You're all experts at that already, whether you're a PT or a manual therapist. You can see when a client walks in if they're limping, if the shoulder's up one way. That's easy. The biggest challenge is the why. And what I want to sort of try and help you understand is people can make it appear easy. It can be easy, so I'll come back to that in a moment. But actually, your client's body is an integrated system made up of myofascial, skeletal, and neural. And if any one of those systems in any area of the body is in some way limited, that area could contribute to that squat. So their poor squat could be their foot, their knee, their ankle, the pelvis, the spine, the shoulders, the nerves, the bones. So how is Brett supposed to work out how he improves his client's biomechanical performance, which is what I think you're asking me, yeah? So they come with a problem, or they look just wrong. They just don't move well. And you're like, okay, we need to stop that, take that bar off your back, don't squat so low. You use verbal cueing, push the knees out, that still doesn't work. And so you're trying to work out, how do I help this client? Am I down the right route there, Brett, with all of that? Right, okay, perfect. So there are models of thought out there that will teach you how to test the body. That is one thing that my education company does. We teach you how to break it down and test the body. There are other models out there. There's the biotensegrity group. They don't agree with the biomechanics model. You've got all these different training models, FMS. You've got, there's Kelly Starrett, there's Paul Check. There's so many models out there. How does a practitioner decide what route to go down? Yeah, there's an expense attached. There is, their view is different to your view. So number one, every single movement assessment system out there is flawed. All of them. The one I teach is flawed. And they're all flawed because every client you look at is built and designed differently, has a different history of injury, or different bone lengths, or different age, different degeneration, different sports. And so it can all appear really complicated. And we can get really complicated. But what I try and do for people is just simplify it. The squat alone is a test. The squat is a benchmark. So you might film them from the side, and forgive me, you may have already done this, Brett. You might film them from the side, and you look at the concertina of the angles in dorsiflexion, knee flexion, hip, spine. Look where the bar is positioned over the foot, and there's your benchmark. And then you can start to work through their body systematically to improve the function of each area. So let's say you start at the pelvis. Right, okay, we could do soft tissue work, we could do trigger point, we could sit them on a lacrosse ball, we could give them a muscle energy technique, we could stretch them, we could mobilize the nerves and focus on the pelvis, and then film that side squat again. And if it's improved, fantastic, but it's not quite there yet. Right, let's have a look at your spine. So you then go to the spine. And this sounds like a very long drawn out process, but if I'm perfectly honest, from my professional training and practice, that's how it is. That's how it works, is you have to systematically work through the body. There is no quick fix. If you find a quick fix, you've been lucky, and it may not last long term. So our job is to document, photograph, video, learn assessments, document that, monitor that, write that down, put an intervention into place, follow it with exercise in terms of the strength application, and over time, see that client improve. Let me let you into a little secret. That's what everyone does. That's what all practitioners with the ability to assess do. Even if you've got a video analysis, fancy 30-gram piece of kit, that's what they would have to do. Because the way this organism works is it interacts. So your body is a complete system. And so as you systematically work through, say, the pelvis, spine, shoulders, knees, feet, and you start to see the movement improve, number one, you know you're doing the right thing. Number two, your client's happy because you can show them, look, Barry, look at your squat now, week 1 to week 2. The real way to enhance your confidence is to start applying new techniques and monitor how they work, and go on CPDs like this to understand various models and methods for testing, basic range of movement testing, which you might learn, Sarah may have done on your manual therapy, where you look at the way they move. I think we've got to make sure that we don't we keep clear in our minds our remit. I've just written a blog that's going out, I think it's going out tomorrow morning, about remit, and I did one last week for personal trainers. Tomorrow it's for sports therapists. We've got to be mindful of our remit. So Brett has talked about, I'll come to the rest of your point here. So knee injury, let me just, other joints, but can they be traced back to the pelvis? Yeah, right, okay. So I think I've probably gone through that a little bit already, haven't I, Brett? Where he's being more specific issues in other joints. Oh, Jamie, don't. You make me all broody now. Look at them little babies. But they can be traced back to the pelvis, ignoring specific trauma. Right, okay. I think one of the things we, and again, I've got a group of practitioners here. So we've got physios, we've got sports therapists, personal trainers, Pilates, yoga. So we've got predominantly all the professionals that I usually teach together in a classroom. What I always recommend is that, and you may do this already, Brett, is having in your team, and I don't mean a guy down the road that you ring up and send your clients off to. I mean somebody who, they may not be in your facility, maybe a physio or a chiro or osteo, one of the clinicians, maybe a podiatrist who you trust, practitioners who have a multifaceted model of human movement understanding and application for every type of client. So you and Heather will work together because you have different personal training specialisms. You've got a female Heather, you've got yourself as a guy, and you may decide to filter out your clients to different, to each of you differently based on personality or your extra skill sets. If you were a Pilates teacher, Heather was the strength coach, that might dictate who you send the client to. But we should broaden that out rather than, and I know you're not saying this, Brett, but rather than trying to be a physio, get a physio on board. Rather than trying to be a podiatrist, get a podiatrist on board. But I don't mean get them on board and just say, can I send my clients to you? I mean, get them on board to the point where you transfer meaningful information back and forth with the client's permission and GDPR in place that allows you collectively to provide a superior service that shows how confident you are about looking after the client comes first if you're prepared to send them to somebody else and for them to pay somebody else for a week or a month or whatever it is. It keeps us within our remit. And what we can also do, I don't know what the professional terminology is, but I say make their ears bleed with questions. You can learn so much. So if you've got an in-house therapist or clinician and you're asking them questions, you gradually become more aware of red flags, yellow flags, conditions, symptoms, things like that, that may make you, obviously they're not going to change your insurance, they're not going to change who you work with, but they make you more perceptive and a better communicator about who the right person is. So in your facility, Brett, you might be able to then showcase to everybody, we can take anybody in, we're a signpost group, we can help all physical ailments, whether it's not me, it's my colleague or my referral network. But the missing link, I think, at the minute is that meaningful transfer of information. And I think if we can do that, then we know when a biomechanical issue is ours and when it isn't, because you could immediately send them to your therapist and say, can you just check him over? He's got a sore knee and he had a prolapsed disc a few years back with a bit of sciatica, but he says he's okay. He hasn't got any reports, so I've got no information. The physio or the chiro, whoever it is, can check him over, send them back and write you a note and say, Brett, you're fine, crack on, just be mindful of this. So we can then stick to the biomechanical analysis that is movement. And then if they're symptomatic or have a history that you're slightly nervous about, you can just tick a box. Your mate's happy because you've sent them some business. They would hopefully, if you get the right person, reciprocate and send them back. And you've got, yeah, I get it. But you've got this great system in place, because if you've got 150 members, that physio is going to want to send people back again because he wants access to the other 149 if they get injured. So it is, I'm not saying it's simple, it's easy, it's not simple, or it's simple, it's not easy. but I think if we're actively trying to do this, we can stay within our remit, because I think a lot of the reasons why people want to, personal trainers I'll take as an example, or exercise professionals, or even manual therapists, we've got to be careful, because if we got rid of all our clients with an issue, we'd have none left. Let's get real. So our education that was designed 30 years ago, it's now getting upgraded, I think is slightly out of date in terms of the physical problems that are coming to us, which is why we're getting these level 4 qualifications coming through in the exercise world. So low back pain, level 4, obesity, diabetes, those kind of issues. But I think we've got to be aware that it doesn't really change when somebody comes to us with a red flag or a clinical condition. So having that level of understanding and a network around us, I think it's about having confidence is where I'm trying to get to, Brett, because when you ask questions like that, I'm aware that you've probably had an experience with a client with a knee injury and some history that you're specifically thinking about, and you don't need to share any more than that. But I think everybody in here will have some empathy with you, and you're worried, am I doing the right thing? How do I assess them? The assessment won't change whether they're injured or not if they're under your insurance bracket. Assessing them is the same. It's about looking at the way they move, whether you use an evidence-based test. We teach evidence-based tests for every joint and structure in the body. And you can learn them piece by piece and apply them piece by piece. You can go to other models where they would teach you how to assess gross movements, like FMS will teach squatting, lunging, etc. Just different ways of looking at it. Or you can just use video analysis. So I'm aware that right now everybody's, finance poor, time rich to some degree, and so we're trying to see where is it worth. It's more important to us to know where to invest our time and our money to solve these problems. So in simple terms, use your video, and I'm sure you've done that already, Brett. There's apps which I'd recommend, like Coach's Eye. Oops, sorry. Coach's Eye and Technique.
Yeah, Technique's a good one.
And I literally just play with my own videos to begin with. And if you take a photo on your phone, you can upload it to those apps. You don't need to get the app and take the photo in there. So if you've got a backlog of photos of clients, you could then upload or import into those apps, put them next to each other, or a still shot even, and you can start comparing their movement. The reason I encourage video with clients' permission is because it's hard evidence. If we're just saying, oh, you look like you're moving better, how do you feel? They could potentially people with chronic issues that they've had for a long time, oh, it's my dicky knee, Brett, I'll just crack on. They actually don't realise that they are better. And it's just our word against theirs, they might be like, oh, I may just be saying that, so I book some more sessions. Whereas if you've got a photo of their squat on week 1 and their squat on week 2, then that alone, and it's so simple, it can be so simple, I think, Brett, is what I'm trying to say here. So hopefully I've got to that. I think some of these other questions might shout louder if they don't do what I want them to. Yeah, I like that. Sarah, is there a good assessment template you would recommend? I would like to get back into the gym to help people rather than just rubbing people's shoulders. I think what this has done, Sarah, being in lockdown for manual therapists, is it's highlighted your need for something online by way of exercise. So your muscle energy techniques would come in here. In the PT world, that's usually known as PNF. A muscle energy technique is a broader term for PNF is one example, and there are other examples of muscle energy techniques. One of the ones we teach was an evidence-based one that was looked at by Rebo Siskar called post-contraction sensory discharge, which is a submaximal endurance hold that they can do themselves from home perfectly safe. So I would be looking, Sarah, at other ways of delivering movement-based therapy, which I know you being involved in any of my filters will know the benefit of that. So I think kind of keeping that in mind, but you asked about an assessment template. So do you mean a form, a document? Or do you mean a system? Yeah, okay. So you could have, I haven't got one here. Let's say you had, and I know you'll have one of these already, Sarah, but even for the PTs, you have an image of a skeleton on a document, and your client, you write on it a cross on the knee, and you write, right, knee, what did Brett say earlier? Knee injury, what was it? And you write the history down. So therapists have that document. You could just broaden that to movement as well, and have pelvis limited to 30 degrees in the squat. You know, I mean, you could create your own. You could also pay a company who's already done that and get one from them and learn a system based on documenting and that system. But you can create your own. It's just that time and being able to create the resources. So let me know if that leaves you with any more questions, Sarah. Harry, I do apologise if you, okay. So Harry is a sports therapist near Boston, Lincolnshire. Came for a listen, but does have a question about lifting techniques. Great. Over the last few years, I started to work towards conditioning lower back pain patients for the way they lift, often poor form, yanking action, side flexed position, rather than considered safe way to lift. I still include lots of other work as well, but I was wondering your views on this. I hate that question. Your view. Ask me something technical, Harry. I find that no matter how you tell someone to lift, reinforce it, there will always be that one time they lift incorrectly. So, right, okay. Trying to account for this in their rehab. Okay, it's a great question. My view is of no interest. What people need to know is something solid, evidence-based, good practice. So my opinion is unimportant without my technical training. So I will always come from my technical training because my personal professional experience is far more limited than that. Does that make sense? So my view, I would use my technical training rather than my opinion, because I'm limited to, although to be fair, Harry, to your question, predominantly my client base is the strength athletes, the powerlifters, bodybuilders, strongmen, Olympic lifters. So it is slightly within my field. But again, I'm limited to the 16 years that I've been in practice as a strength and conditioning coach, British weightlifting coach, with a special interest in biomechanics. So if I use more technical models, it's more helpful to you and everybody else. So, right, not posting if you could go with a more specific question, it might help me to reply. But I think if I can just use some of the things you've said there, no matter how you tell someone to lift, and like Brett was confessing about shouting at someone a bit louder, they lift incorrectly, then they are either not ready for the lift, and I mean that in terms of, it might be a warm-up, maybe a mindset, but also biomechanically. And I think from my professional training, we need to prepare them for the warm-up. So in the exercise world or the movement world, we're taught a warm-up. So for you PTs out there, if you're trained like me, a warm-up is 5 minutes on the treadmill. So is the common, I think they still do that, or a pulse raiser, bit of skipping or jogging on the spot, depending on the client type. In the lifting world, we may then also use light weights for reps to warm them up. So you might do some bodyweight squats or some ramp training to begin. So from a strength and conditioning background. But for all of those warm-ups, you need to be prepared. Let me give you an example that's common, I think, to the questions that both Brett and Harry have asked and to our regular client base now. I want you to imagine your typical client, and they come into your session, and I want you to think about what they have been doing for the 24 hours, let's say 16 hours prior to getting to see you. I would bet 80% would be probably quite sedentary, based on the way we're supposed to be using our body as a hunter-gatherer. They will either have been sitting at a desk, they may have been right now homeschooling kids or working from home. If they have a manual job or they're quite physical, they may have been doing a very repetitive movement in a factory or working with some equipment that vibrates and give them numbness in little fingers. So I'm just giving you examples of kind of all different professions out there. Army, they may have had a backpack on. A policeman would have had a big load of kit on. I don't know how much their kit weighs, with boots, tasers and things, and truncheon. Do they have truncheons these days? I'm old, aren't I, saying truncheon? Whatever they carry these days. Then they come to you, and our training usually is something along the lines of a bit of a pulse raiser, maybe some mobility work, but actually we may need to do other techniques like muscle energy techniques that are a mental, also that mind to muscle connection, more of a subtle stimulation, a release technique, rather than simply stretching or a pulse raiser. Now, I'm aware some of you will probably already be doing that. So I'm saying that for those who may not be aware of that. So Harry, the other thing might be if they're lifting incorrectly, are they uncomfortable? The right shoes, the right equipment? Are they ready in terms of their tissue tolerance? So Tim Gabbett came over. I was very lucky to go and listen to him speak in a very small workshop, very intimate, which is really great, over at Mike's place, actually, Marcus. And he taught us a load management workshop, which was fantastic. This guy's phenomenal. I mean, there's just research pouring out of his mouth all the time. So from an evidence-based perspective, concepts of load tissue tolerance and load management. It's not a vocabulary that we use a huge amount in the exercise world yet, but I think it will be. So people usually get injured because their tissue is not yet tolerant to the load it's experienced. And I might, Marcus may well have some thoughts on this. So what we're doing as trainers and movement coaches is we're building up their tissue tolerance through movement and exercise. So that might be one concept, Harry, for their movement difficulty. So lifting incorrectly. Obviously, sometimes it takes time, so keeping the load lower as you build it up, which I'm sure you'll know all of that stuff. And technique. So I think we've got to keep a mind of what we're looking at is technique and what is actually an intrinsic biomechanical compensation for their lifestyle, their genetics, their history, their injuries. And so something may not be a technique issue, it may be a biomechanical issue, which might be what you're looking at, Harry, because you're highly, obviously you're doing your BSc in sports therapy. So I know the kind of level that you're at, but it's just conceptually sometimes understanding if you haven't quite found the biomechanical limitation, it can still present in a movement. So let's say you've improved their pelvis, you've improved the spine, they're moving really well, you've been videoing from the side, and the squat's looking better. So you're like, right, okay, let's progress them, but the lift still looks bad. Is it their feet? Is it their, the shoes? Is it something else? Is it still a pattern? You need to break it down even more. Have I answered your question yet, Harry? I realise I get on one sometimes, and then I've got to pull myself back and go, did I actually answer the question? If I get, and I think I did this on my very first one of these, which was about 8 weeks ago. And I think, I know Ben Coomber talks about it a lot. If you're not familiar with Ben, I'm a massive fan of Ben Coomber, who is BTN Academy. So he's from the nutrition world. So I leave him to do that stuff. It's not my bag. But he also talks about if we begin to analyze what our question is, and I think, who wrote the book, 5 Whys? The 5 Whys. Does anybody remember that one? If you come into, like you've come in here to this and you're thinking of a question, and Brett's got a question and he asks me about this client, and I say, why are you asking me? And if you then answer that, and then I say, why are you thinking that? And then you answer that, and you go through the 5 whys, you will probably answer your own question. So if we can start to think about the way we ask questions I don't mean of me, you can ask me anything you like. I'm just trying to help you when I'm not there to offer this thinking, so that if we work out what we're really asking, you can often find, or at least work towards where to go to find the answer. Because if you really drill down to what you're trying to find out, and I think often when people come along to these sessions, they usually say something along the lines out of, I want to understand movement better. So that's, well, we all do that. I would like to do that. So why are you asking me? Because if I want to do the same thing you do, am I in the right place? So I said, well, why do you want to know that? And then Sarah says, well, I've got this client. And I said, okay. She tells me a bit of detail and say, well, why do you think that is? And then she says, well, I don't know, but they did tell me about this in the past. I said, okay. So why do you think that might? And then you start to realize you actually have more of the answers already in your arsenal. So if I went back to, thanks, Marcus, force reaction on tissues is the biomechanical principle of levers and inertia, mass and weight. Yeah, I actually did. I'm going to do a sales pitch here. If you go to the Biomechanics Education workshop page, there is an online CPD. It's only 27 quid, but it is basically that stuff. So if you want to learn about forces, equilibrium, biomechanics, it's an online course. You do it in your own time. You get your quiz paper, you mark yourself. It's called Fundamental Principles of Movement Analysis. So if that's more what you're after, that's the type of CPD that I would recommend. It's low cost, low investment, low risk. But in terms of, there's a lot of biomechanical training out there. It needs to relate to what you're trying to do with it, because it can be so, I mean, it blows my mind when I look at it sometimes. So what we've done in that online CPD is we've said, think about the turning force of a bicep curl. So we've related it back to an exercise you might see in a gym. So that you can then, okay, if you know why you're learning about a turning force and you can relate it to something you can visualize in a gym, you're more likely to remember it. If you just talk about turning forces and levers, it becomes very complex, and you're trying to visualize, well, what does that mean on the body? So what we've tried to do on that CPD is relate it back to movement and exercise. So there's that option there. But I think sometimes we've got to be mindful that you can get lost in the complex end. So what I try and do is make it very simple. Have I answered everyone's questions? Has anybody got any more? We've got about 20 minutes. So hi, Anne, welcome here. Do you have any questions? Where are you in the world? What's your profession? So has anything I've said, or Jamie maybe, has anything I've said brought forth any more questions? And by the way, don't be afraid by my 5 whys one. You can ask anything you like, but I might ask you why. So I must find out what that book is. It was a really good one. I think it was a business book. Was it Sinek? Simon Sinek? 5 whys? I'm not sure. But it's a great way. And that's the only way that I learned. My mentor, who I was lucky to be invited to work with some 16 years ago, and he's the reason why I now do what I do. He would never answer any question I asked him. He was a chartered physio. He would never answer my questions. He would say, what do you think? And I'd say, yeah, but can't you just tell me? Well, tell me what you think. And we'd start a conversation, and he'd keep asking me questions. And it got to the point where we'd be on these long, like, road trips going around doing this education that we'd made up. And I would be about to ask a question, and I thought, he's just going to ask me why. So let me think what the answer is to the why first. And then I'd end up sitting there and I'd go, actually, I don't need to ask him. I've just worked it out. So it was a superb lesson for me. And I don't find all the answers, don't get me wrong. And, you know, there's always more whys to go in. But I think that's where these types of sessions can be so helpful, is that as a group, I would love to do this face-to-face. I would much prefer to do this face-to-face. I really feel kind of slightly uncomfortable by the monologue. It makes me just feel slightly fraudulent in terms of, I see us as a we, no hierarchy. I'm no more educated or more switched on. I may have been around a bit longer than most of you, by the look of you. You're a bit younger than me. But I always see it as it's great to discuss. Let's have healthy discussions where it's okay to say, I have no idea. That's when you're going to really start learning, when you just say, I have no idea. Help me out. How do I work it out? Rather than also expecting educators, gurus, leaders to just give you an answer. I feel like if you just get an answer, that's not helpful, because you need to go into the why. The what's the easy part. The why, you need this to work. There was a quote I read about education. True education is not the answer, it's how to work it out. So I think Heather, sorry, I don't know the name. Was he the one who did the 5 whys? Oh, is it? Oh, I don't recognise the name. Maybe it was. Thanks for that. Eric Rees, or IES. Harry, have you any cheats for clients with FAI, hip impingement when squatting leg press to avoid aggression? No way, Harry. No cheating. Get them sorted, take the load off, send them to a therapist, or obviously you're a therapist, I would work with you. There are no cheats. We shouldn't be cheating. But I think what you mean is, how do I keep, and I'm going to read between the lines here, Harry, how do I keep my client moving while they have an impingement of the hip? It may be you don't squat for a period of time. You work on the ankle, knee and hip mobility in different ways. I'd be mindful, because if squatting's uncomfortable, then there's no point. Don't get them squatting, and I know you know that. So I think there's more to that question. If it hurts, don't do it. No cheating. Payam, hi. Thank you, Payam. Oh, I did pronounce your name right. Okay. Personal trainer, always looking to expand my knowledge, learning new things. Join mainly to listen, no burning questions. Give me a few items so far. Fantastic, that's great. Heather, there are a few, so not entirely sure. Okay. Harry, foot width and placement is a good way to start and see what position decreases the pain. So Marcus, Harry is a physiotherapist. So from his understanding and training of impingement, he can offer a more insured piece of advice than I would. So where our different responses come from, Harry, is I'm not clinically trained to deal with people with impingements and pain. So I would be, if that was me, which is what you asked me, then I would say you don't cheat, you send them away. What Marcus has done, and this is a great example, by the way, of why I was saying all of that to Brett earlier. I would send them to Marcus. Marcus says, no, actually, you're all right, Rach. Tell Harry, alter the foot width, send them over for some treatment, or do this type of treatment. That's how we should work together. So what we're not doing is disagreeing, even though we gave a different answer. What we're doing is we're both staying within our insurance remit. So that was a really good example of that. Thanks, Marcus. Jamie. Okay, no problem. He's gone with his babies need their protein. Julie, no problem. Heather, do you have a link for the previous webinar you did? You mentioned last time. Yes, I will go and get those for you, Heather. They're on there. I've just got to unlist them and make them public. Sarah, no problem. Payam, actually one question. I have a client with mild scoliosis. Good question coming up. Generally okay, but sometimes experiences shoulder pain. What would you say my best course of action is to keep us safe and injury free? Brilliant question. So scoliosis, if you're not familiar with it, I think most people are, is a structural deviation laterally of the spine, and it can, in my limited understanding, be anything from very mild and a single curve to being sort of very extreme. And a friend of mine was curved over so far as a child, if they hadn't put metal rods in her back, she would have suffocated herself. So there are different sort of degrees of scoliosis. That's the structural version. Functional scoliosis can be caused by tension in the QL muscle in the lumbar spine, which can give the appearance of a hinge, where it's almost giving you you might see a visible hinge in the spinal processes, or you may just see that the PSIS are higher on one side, something like that. That's different. So first of all, my question to you, Payam, and I'm going to assume the fact you've said she's got scoliosis is she's been diagnosed with it. If they've been diagnosed with structural scoliosis, you cannot change it, number one. However, structural differences like scoliosis can be exaggerated by some functional scoliosis on top. So what I mean by that is, just because somebody has a certain degree of structural scoliosis in appearance doesn't mean that the gravity hasn't made them curve even more. So if you've got a deviation to one side structurally, you may curve more from gravity, for example, and so there may be room for improvement, but our expectation would need to change. If they've had an x-ray and they've been diagnosed with structural scoliosis, we're clearly not curing scoliosis, and I know that's not what you're saying, Payam. One of the risks we may expose ourselves and our clients to is a client with scoliosis having shoulder pain and assuming the shoulder pain is because of the scoliosis. So number one, try not to make that assumption. It might be, but it might not be. So if you just focus on the scoliosis to help your client's shoulder pain, you could be missing a whole plethora of potential causes for that shoulder problem. So that's one thing there. If it's a functional scoliosis, clearly we want to work on the areas of the body, go right back to the beginning of this chat that I was having with Brett, work through the system, and start to improve the movement through each part of the body. Brett, where is the role of biomechanics for the general population? Classically, we don't know what we don't know yet. How deep into biomechanics do you feel it's necessary to go for the general population? When I started speaking biomechanically to some clients, yeah, they don't give a hoot. So as a biomechanics coach, while I am a biomechanics coach, what I'm selling is movement, joy of movement, freedom of movement. So your clients, for example, coming to your gym, your members, I don't know who they are predominantly, usually 35 plus, some weekend warriors, some want to lose a bit of weight, females will probably do your boot camps, that kind of thing. And then you'll have a young group who come in and stare at their phones as they swap round using, no, right, okay, well done. So they don't come in thinking, oh, Brett's a biomechanics expert, I'm going to go and see him. They have no idea what biomechanics means or is. It's a complex science. They don't even read that as a selling point. In marketing, and I'm going to go a bit commercial here, in selling our service, what you are promising is what they want. And when you really get down to, and this comes back to the 5 whys, which is a great link back, is, and I'm sure you'll do this in your consultation, why are you here? Why are you coming? Oh, well, I just want to move a bit. I just want to get fit. Okay, well, why is that? Oh, well, I don't know. And they're kind of like, oh, well, I just want to get fit. And yeah, I've got a bit of a dickly knee, right? Yeah, okay. So what does that mean to you if we could help you with that knee and getting fit? Well, I'd feel better about how I could, and you know that idea already, I'm sure. So really drilling down to the root cause for them joining your gym, that's what you're selling. Don't even try, don't even bother, unless you can link it directly to their goal. So you might, let me try and think of an example. So your guy's squatting and you video him and you show him and he goes like that. I don't even know what that means. And you say, well, if you imagine when we were hunter-gatherers, we actually used to squat with our bottom on our heels. Do you want to have a go at that body weight? Have a little go, Barry. And he has a go and he goes, see how hard that is? What that means is when you're walking upstairs, those joints don't have the same range as what they would have if you were, walking up a hill as a hunter-gatherer. So, and over time, the stiffer you get. So it's translating it back to their vocabulary and their world. But I would agree totally with you. There's no point in, I think it's difficult because you get really proud of your knowledge and your training and you want to kind of showcase it a little bit, but there's honestly no point. You kind of lose them. And so we do have to literally talk their language. So I'm quite sure if you've been in the industry for 9 years, you will talk to Barry completely differently to the way you talk to Heather, or the way you talk to Frank or Sally or Ethel. You will have a different vocabulary. It's still you, but the dynamics is different because of them and what they want. Did the Y analogy just talk you out of you? Okay, thanks, Brett. Marcus, is the pain on the side curves out on? Okay, so Pam, so Marcus is asking you a question in there, if you want to have a little read. Sarah, an osteopath I know is obsessed with heel lifts to fix everything. Interesting point on the hip hinge. Okay, so one of the other videos that I've put into our YouTube channel that Heather's just mentioned, if you go over to the Biomechanics Education YouTube channel, there's loads of free stuff in there. Just go and fill your boots. I did one with a Sam Chidwick, who is a podiatrist. And we had a great conversation, a bit like Marcus and I have done in here, about our professional skill sets. Definitely go and watch that one, Sarah. If you can't find it, let me know. So Harry's popped off. Marcus, not limited to the scoliosis causing the tissues of the scapula and the shoulder girdle in the opposite side. Yes, absolutely, Marcus. So Pam, if you read through Marcus's reply, and he's explaining from his understanding of the body, clinical training and issues and structural scoliosis, some ways of thinking about that. Brett is saying, do you support the basic NASM active IQ concept of range of motion? Okay. Basic principles of movement progression. Is it too simplistic? Right, okay. Good question. I'm just in the middle of doing the NASM, is it called corrective exercise specialist or something? Yeah. I'm already technically a corrective exercise specialist. Not the NASM one, but I'm just going through it. I think it's always interesting to look at different models. What every education provider will always do is give you a sample. They should do. You should get a flavour or a taste of it. What they should also do is definitely make it simple. And so learning is like a pyramid. You start down here, you start your level 2, then you do level 3, then you realise how little you know, and you do a bit more, and you carry on through the layers of learning. And it isn't that what you learn on level 2 was wrong. It isn't that simple is wrong. It's just conceptually, we need to have a simplistic way of understanding it, working through the layers of our understanding and paradigms, and then we have to work it back the way down to then translate it to Barry in the gym. So, as I've said right up front, you asked me about their concept of range of motion, stabilization, endurance, and their principles. Every human movement system is flawed. Theirs is, mine is, Kelly Starrett's is, Paul Check. They're all flawed because every human body is different. And every group of variables about each human, each member that walks in your gym is a different collection of variables, not just from movement, but mindset, neural pathways, time, injury history, limb lengths, all of that collectively. So what each education provider who teaches a system is trying to do is just give you something to follow and take your members through a progressive way of looking at things. So the one I gave you earlier, pelvis, spine, shoulder, knee, feet. Over the weeks, you change something, film it. Is it better? Yes, brilliant, do more of that. Let's see what else we can do now, add this in. Same with theirs. What they've done is try to simplify. And it's about, the language that you put there is a bit more strength and conditioning flavoured. Range of movement, stabilization, endurance. Ours is preparation and capacity, stability and control, function and performance, so not dissimilar. We talk about if the intrinsics are not of their full capacity, there's no point in stabilizing the core. So the stabilization has to follow the movement preparation. So as long as you've got any version that follows a logic process like that, it's going to work. That's why they're selling it. That's why I can sell mine. That's why people that we train succeed. But I think for you guys as practitioners, it's about what do I want to achieve at the other end? Which education company feels like they have integrity, it feels right, is going to give me a bit of a sample, so that you can then move forwards with something. Have you done that training, by the way, Brett? Have you done the NASM training? Yeah. How do you get on with that? Does it work? Let me unmute you. Can I unmute you? There you go.
Yeah.
So everyone can hear you now.
Yeah. So I used it. I did it as a follow-on. I didn't do it officially. I just bought the NASM book and kind of did it myself. So I didn't kind of do the NASM way of doing it. It was cheaper. So yeah. So no, it was good. I think what I found is exactly like you said. I look at it in terms of kind of going into different rooms. You know, you've got the pyramid concept. I think this is one. This allows you to open the door, go into a room and explore a topic. And then when you're done, you can come out and you know what's in that room. And for me, that was very much about going into the NASM principle. But I wanted something concrete to be able to kind of lean on in case someone comes to me and says, well, how does this work? Why is that? And I have had clients who are like, well, why is this happen? Why is that true? Now, I don't mind clients coming to me and saying like, why? But it's nice to just go, this is something I can lean upon, as opposed to, well, I've done this for a long time, and kind of go down the kind of ego defense route. So having NASM to lean back on and to show them the 40 names at the front of the book that have all got the letters after their names, like yourselves, was nice to be able to go, here's a principle. But I found it good. But again, it's then I found attaching some of my own meaning to what it was. And like you say, going into more depth to specify it, especially explaining it to my members so that they understood what I was saying. And I use cues now, and I like my cues in a very specific way so that people can visualize, like you said earlier. You know, it's all very well saying, you know, thoracic extension. I say, you know, stick your boobs out. It's just an easier way of explaining it. People get that more. So I think taking that basic concept and then kind of putting my own spin on it without redefining what it is kind of good. But I didn't know if you felt that they were too simplistic, or if some of the principles are better than the others. I mean, you said they're all flawed, obviously. So.
I think what we've got to realise is, and I'm sure everybody in here will appreciate, is everything to do with the dynamic inside of a client's body is a hypothesis. Nobody really knows. What the education providers have done is taken research done by people who had the knowledge, the time and the resources to research an input and an output. And when you do that input and output over and over again, and you get the same result, you can probably hypothesize that's the right thing or the wrong thing to do. So what we're getting down at the end that we're talking about here is going on a training course is what the research, if it is research backed or the education provider backed, people have done this input output and it works. Oh, this is great. Let's put it in this. Let's make it into education and teach people. And then we give it to you, and then you go, but I need something that's solid. And I mean, good luck. It's not out there because it's impossible. So here's a model. Try that. The more you learn, the more you will realize there is more to learn, and we all know that. So there is never a right. That is it. That's the solution. But you will potentially find another model that you go, actually, do you know what? That's the one I want to follow. Or actually, no, this one's working. I'm all right with this. Or you decide, I've got some CPDs, I've got, you know, I need to get, I've got a bit of cash, I fancy doing another big course. You go on another one and it just changes your whole paradigm. You're like, actually, do you know what? I'm going to replace that with this. So there is no best way to do it other than the one that you think is right for you, your business and your clients. And if it works, fantastic. Is there more to learn? Yes, always. I'm realizing it's 1 o'clock, so I'm going to start bringing it to a close. I'm just going to look at the last two. So Brett says 100%. Yeah, reconfirm the longer. Yeah, brilliant. And then Claire, could you the link to the CPD? Brilliant. Okay, so let me just take that email. Okay, so Marcus, yes, even physiotherapy with all its so-called evidence-based skills still throws curveball up questions, doubts, questions. Yeah. And the program I teach is actually fundamentally designed by a chartered physio who got fed up with chartered physiotherapy training that he had 30 years ago, not always working. So he challenged that sort of degree level training and then took it with other models and developed his own. And that's what we teach now, which is the Biomechanics Education Diploma, which is in Biomechanics Coaching. So we do have roots in physio, but where Marcus has done that particular training, he's agreeing. He's sort of saying, yeah, it doesn't always work. They're all evidence-based, but when you actually start reading the research, you realise how ambiguous research is. That's what we've got. So I always say to people, just pull it right back to, are you helping people? Yes. Do you feel like you know what you're doing? Yeah, most of the time. Do you still feel like there's things you'd like answers to? Yeah, probably. Keep reading, keep coming on these events, keep getting educated, do more training. It is a constant learning process. I think the day a practitioner says, right, I know it all now, that's it, I'm done on education, that is when the clients should run for a mile. Can be, Brett. I am not academic. I've never been to university, but I think there is a value in it. I think what we've got to do is be careful that we realise everybody is just trying to do the right thing. All the people trying to do the right thing and help others are different, and some may do it in a way that others perceive as with arrogance, and they're proud that they've spent 5 years at university and they've lived off no frills beans for months because they had no money. They've worked for that, and to some degree I have a respect for that. I have never done that. I've done things like that in a different way, but I don't get that recognition. So it's about character rather than academia. I don't think we should probably bracket it in there. I understand why you said that. There are some academics who are really open-minded. Marcus is one. My mentor, who's a childhood physio, he's another one. So I think while I hear what you're saying, it's the person rather than the field usually. I think we've got to be careful not to assume all, and I know you're not saying this, that maybe all physios are arrogant or that all academics are, so I think there is that trend of people being like that. And I think if we individually can be representatives of being inclusive and giving everyone a chance, in my experience, when I've had people with a little bit of an ego on my training, just give it a stroke. Tell them they're great. And usually they then come around and you realise, okay, Marcus, you can say that, I can't. But I think there is a culture sometimes that it develops these stigmas. Physiotherapists have been pushed upwards in the hierarchy, in perception, by the clients, by the culture, by the government, the way Maggie Thatcher ruled out the remedial gymnasts and said, well, no, we need physios. So there's a whole political side to it there. Payam, I'm going to take yours as well. Let me just take a couple of emails here so that I don't lose you guys who want links, because I'm going to have to go. I've got a client waiting because I could do this all day. But what I'm going to do, I was going to make this my last one because nobody was asking me any questions. But Brett, you can come back every week for me. Payam, Heather, all those guys. I know Marcus will come back. So if you're happy to come back next week, I will do this again. And you, Sarah, I will do this again. But you need to come back with questions. Bring your colleagues, bring them in, because I love this stuff. So the more we can, and I've taken your email now, Payam. So I can send info through. Same time next week. The link will be on my Facebook page, Rachel France, or Facebook page, Biomechanics Education. Or you can send me your email. Email me your email so I don't lose it in the links. Rachel@biomechanicseducation.com. You're very welcome, everybody. Brett, thanks for all that interaction. Marcus, thanks for your input as always. Interesting study done whilst Institute of Osteo showed public's relationship and understanding of physio, chiro and osteo is very interesting, because nobody has a clue what the difference is out there. And maybe between us, we don't really know. We're all human movement practitioners. Yeah, I've got your email, Payam, and I've got Claire's. So yes, otherwise you know where to find me, guys. Give me a nudge at any point if anything else comes up. Let me know what you want to talk about next week. Same time. Have a great week. Take care. Thanks, guys. Stay safe. Yeah, I'll send me your email, Heather, Rachel@biomechanics.education.com, and I'll forward you all the links, or I'll send you through. Or just go to Biomechanics Education. I've just got to unlist them. So they're not public yet, but I'll unlist them. If you let me do that today, and then I'll do it for you tomorrow.
Fab. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.